Alrighty, hi everyone. My name is Sierra Cosmi. I am the marketing specialist over at Dynexus Recruiting and Staffing. And thank you for joining our webinar, Partner Marketing Epic Fails and How to Avoid Them. We will have a question and answer session at the end of our webinar. So if you guys have questions throughout the session, please just leave those in the comments or shoot us a message, and we will relay those over at the end. So I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Julian Trenzel. He is the president and CEO of Dynexus Recruiting, and we will also put the contact information of our panelists at the end, so you guys can all contact them if you have any questions. So Julian, take it away.
Thank you very much, Sierra. And hello, everybody. This is Julian, and we are very excited to be producing our next webinar entitled ERP Partner Marketing Epic Fails and How to Avoid Them. I have some terrific panelists today to joining us, some of the premier marketing minds of the mid-market ERP industry. I'm going to begin from left to right. Candice Edelin is president and CEO of Propel Growth. Krista Magnuson, CEO and founder of Magnuson Enterprises. Mary Miller, director of marketing at Paytrace. And Khaled Nasra, head of marketing at Binary Stream. Candice, Krista, Mary, Khaled, welcome to you all for joining us today. We are going to begin today with, I have some prepared questions, and as Sierra said, this is an interactive session. You are going to hear from all of our panelists with their stories and interesting things, and of course, we are going to hear from you as well. As Sierra said, please enter into the LinkedIn comments your questions as we go along. We will collate those, and Sierra will feed those to me, and I will feed those to our panelists, and we will have your questions answered in the last 15 to 20 minutes of today. But in the meantime, I'm going to open this up with the very first question to all panelists. And this question is, what is the biggest ERP partner marketing nightmare you have ever encountered? And I open up panelists to share one by one if you wish.
So Julian, I'll kick that one off with, I actually have two examples. One was a virtual event and one was an in-person event. But I'll talk about the virtual one first. So this was several years ago, prior to my current role in Paytrace, but I've been in the channel for a long time. And so this was with a partner a number of years ago. And we had been planning this virtual event for months. You know, you've got the checklist and the due dates and the timeline and all of that. Everybody's agreed to it. The marketing material, the content, the graphics, everything, you know, has been provided to the partner, and they assured us that they had it all covered. They were going to send emails to their customers and their prospects. They were going to socialize it. They were going to include it in next week's newsletter, all of this stuff. Come to find out, the day before the event, the emails were never sent. The messages were never put out. And as a result, we had no registrations. Oops, they had forgotten to send the message. Now I use the word forgotten a little bit loosely because we all think we can do more than we have time for. However, the in-person event was a little bit different because it was during COVID. And so there were a lot of restrictions on travel and who could get in and out of the building and all of this kind of stuff. So again, there were very limited registrations and attendance. So it was a huge disaster, and a lot of time and energy have been put into these events, ultimately for not a lot to show for them. However, I will say this, we made the best of it in both situations by creating videos that then those partners could share out to their audiences, their customers, their prospects alike after the fact, so they could still get some value out of the content that we were going to share.
Oh my gosh, making lemons from lemonade. Nice work, Mary.
Not always easy.
No doubt. How about one of you other panelists? Can you give us one of your big marketing nightmares that you have seen in your business in the mid-market ERP space? Any pitfalls?
I can go. So we have done a lot of marketing consulting over the years with ERP partners, and we were working with a small one that focused on a very specific industry, and they'd also developed their own application to sell into that industry. But they didn't have anything on their website related to that application. They're an Acumatica partner. So we were able to go pull from Acumatica a lot of the feature information and talk about that. But I had to literally make up all of the copy for their product. I'd seen a couple of demos, but I'd never used it and didn't have opportunity to interview buyers at that point. So we wrote it up. We didn't get anybody reviewing that information. And finally, the CEO said, just publish it. So we put up a website of content about feature description of products that no one had reviewed. They ultimately actually sold their business still based on information on the website that no one had reviewed. So lesson is, make sure that you actually schedule time to review the content, because I still to this day don't know how inaccurate or accurate my guesses were about that content.
Wow. Thank you, Candace. Awesome.
I had, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Krista, thank you. Just going off of reviews, this is something that I didn't experience personally, thankfully, but I saw recently at one of the events we have for Dynamics 365 Business Central, a partner had all of their ads, all of their banners, all their marketing had the same messaging, and it landed, but they didn't have any information about who they are. Not a logo, not their name, nothing else. And so I think it's really important to have your messaging done well and focus on the product marketing for sure, but also keep in mind the brand, because as strong as it is, no one's going to predict or know who you are if you forget to put on your logo on your banners. And I thought that was a huge waste, because think of how much of an investment that is to get your banners everywhere, and then you forget to put your own logo on it.
No kidding.
Oh, ouch.
Yikes.
How about you, Krista?
I think my biggest nightmare would be at one point there was a partner I worked with that unfortunately they hired an outsourced marketing firm, not me, just to be clear, and spent about a year working with this firm, and they had done their due diligence when hiring this firm. They had talked to them, they had interviewed them. The people said all the right things about marketing. They were upfront with it. They didn't know ERP. They hadn't worked with ERP before, but they clearly were marketing experts. I will 100% give them that. And we worked with them and deferred to them because we were supposed to be giving them the full reins, and they were going to deliver all these things. And we spent a year doing 3 different email campaigns, tons of time on our side, trying to teach them about ERP, and so that they could write all this copy because they were doing it. And I think throughout the year it cost over $50,000, and there was not a single lead.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ouch.
When we did the review, it all came down to the fact that they didn't have ERP experience. And to me, at least, ERP is a trust sale. You're not selling the features. You're not selling the functionality. As the partner, you are selling the trust relationship. And then are they trusting you? And they are handing you their baby of their business, and you might break it. And they took the approach of all the emails focused on product, focused on functionality, and it didn't land. And no matter what we tried, when we tried to teach them about ERP, there's a difference with experience in the industry, I think. And that was the takeaway that I learned from that was, as much as partners talk about their industry experience, when you're talking to marketing people, the ERP industry experience also is a big factor.
Yeah.
Big
time.
Julian, if I could pipe in on that, I think
Absolutely.
a takeaway for that from what everybody is saying is make sure that you know who you're working with. Like, it's really easy to engage a marketing agency or a marketing consultant that doesn't really know the space, and it's going to be really hard to teach them that messaging. And so I see those kind of problems happening all the time, where all they're doing is just copying and pasting the content from the publisher's site because they don't know enough to do anything else. And they are not getting access to customers to get customer interviews and publish from that perspective. And it's not going to work. And I mean, how many of us have seen partners make those decisions and hire people that just don't know? And it's really hard to teach them.
Yeah, you kind of keyed right into the second question that we're going to ask. Probably, I'm going to bet you $10 right now that you guys are going to feel like one of those, like just taking content without really understanding what you're doing and posting it is probably a pretty common error. But that actually is part of question 2, which is up on the screen now. But what do you feel are the top 3 most common marketing mistakes that ERP partners make today?
Yeah, I'd love to take that one on, and maybe I'm gonna go in another direction from where we've been, which is not involving marketing and strategy. I think far too many partners think of marketing as something on the outlier element. They think they can dedicate very little amount to it, and really sales guys are just gonna sell. But that's not true at all. You kind of have to have a market-led definition to your product. It is not, if you build it, they will come. You can build the best product ever, and if you don't market it, no one will come and buy it. And also, if you don't use your marketing as a feedback loop area where the marketing team educates the product team on what they're hearing, then you're going to build products that no one wants. And so I think rethinking marketing and not assuming that it's just an output function is probably the biggest mistake and biggest inefficiency that ERP partners can have, because you're losing out on so much valuable information that can save you lots of time and money.
Yeah, I'll add to that, Caleb, that, I think in addition to knowing where to put marketing plug us into the pieces of the puzzle, so to speak, I think many ERP partners also think they have more time and bandwidth than they do. Now, we're all probably guilty of this to some extent, but reaching out, knowing when to reach out, not only to your internal marketing partners, but the marketing partners that support you at the ERP provider, at the ISCs that you represent as a partner, to complete that solution for your customers, to extend the value of something that you're representing very strongly. Trust those relationships with your other outside partners, ISVs, marketers, advisors, like those represented here on this discussion. Really tap into their knowledge. Don't be afraid to ask for help. We cannot possibly all know everything about every product and every feature. Candace, to your example before, if that information wasn't vetted by the source, right? How do you know it was valid? Nobody can know everything about the entire ERP system and everything that plugs into it. So use the channel and use the relationships that you have as an ongoing communication feedback loop and resource, so that you don't have to do it all yourself. These relationships, as a couple people have mentioned already, are built on trust, are built on the foundation of we're partners in the channel, where it's almost extended family. You go to these events and you see all your friends. So use those relationships to really get the best answers and the most complete information about not just the ERP system, but also all of the things that need to plug in that to make it successful for your customers. So really leverage the relationships that we have in the channel, I think is a key win to overcome that challenge.
I think both you, Kayla, and Mary both brought on the through line that I hear in your comments are how marketing is not just meant to be getting the information out to the world, but as a tool to be able to procure information that will inform your products and services for delivery, and being able to optimize your message by understanding what the world is thinking and feeling about your products and your services.
100%.
I think.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I have a funny story that, again, true story. And this is in the idea that there's an easy button in marketing or sales. And there isn't. It's like, I love all the metaphors. There's no magic pixie dust. There's no magic wand. There's no easy button. It's hard. And you have to be able to focus on like 1 or 2 things that are going to work. And there's a lot of vendors out there that purport that there is an easy button. And so if you look at the marketing, like I pay a lot of attention to LinkedIn automation vendors. And I mean, their messaging is literally, you can turn this on and in 5 minutes, you can get everything turned on and going. And then you'll be generating sales opportunities and meetings, and it's just going to close while you're sleeping. And so, and who doesn't want that, right? So we buy into it. Well, so one of my clients, another Acumatica reseller actually, was using one of these platforms and companies that were outsourcing LinkedIn outreach. And it doesn't matter whether it's an automation or an individual doing it, the same problem exists where he was, my client, let's call him John, and he was out golfing with his perfect customer, Julian, who had been a client of his for 20 years, but they were second-degree connections on LinkedIn. And while they're out on the golf course, John sends a connection request to Julian saying, hey, I'd like to get acquainted with you. Would you like to connect? And so, of course, Julian's like ribbing him like crazy about it on the golf course. But what you have to realize is, what if that happened to a prospect that you're right in the middle of closing? And it can, because if you're outsourcing things like LinkedIn, where you're trying to pretend to be somebody else, like the person that's doing the outreach is pretending to be John in that case, then how is that outsourced company to know that John and Julian know each other when they're second-degree connections? There's no way to prevent that kind of like super embarrassing mistake. But I see people trying to use these shortcuts all the time and believing the claims. And I get it. I want to believe the claims too, but they're not real. So you really have to look underneath claims from marketing agencies, consultants, and technology to see if does it really make sense? Is that really feasible to generate business while you're sleeping?
Interesting.
It's like the claim of a lot of companies will say that we can get you 10,000 website hits and this, but is that the traffic you want?
Right.
Yeah, I can flood your website with traffic, sure. We can flood your sales team with MQLs, 100%. Your sales team might hate you because they're wasting their time with these people who are just kicking tires and don't actually want to talk to them. So it's that, what are you actually getting for your money?
Totally.
It sounds too good to be true. It probably isn't.
Exactly.
Good rule of
Yeah. My top three, two are very tactical. When I looked at my notes, one was not rebranding. Khaled already mentioned this one. Not rebranding your materials, just putting out the publisher's materials without adding your logo and your contact information. I see that all the time with partners. The second one, again, kind of tactical, focusing only on the product and not what your team brings. Why should they work with you? Because there's 100 other partners that sell that product. So why should they work with you versus them is what they're coming to your content for. They're not coming to you to research Sage or Acumatica or Microsoft. There's websites for those called Sage and Acumatica and Microsoft. They're coming to you to learn about you. So that's the other one that I really see a lot of partners missing. They're focusing on their differentiators. But the biggest one that I think is kind of the easiest to solve for is not having marketing and sales together, like really closely together. Marketing should be sitting in on those weekly sales meetings so that they hear the objections that sales got that week, and then the next week, and then the next week, and they go, oh, you've been getting this for a while. We should do a blog on this or create an infographic. Oh, this seems to be an issue, or we've been promoting, I don't know, the payroll, but you keep having problems on that. Should we perhaps not promote the payroll? Marketing needs that insight on a regular basis. And I think that's something that so many partners have marketing's over here and sales is over here, and sales just says, marketing, create me this. And that's it. But if it just have them be a fly on the wall in your meetings, or have them be, fly on the wall for a discovery call or a demo once in a while. And it's game changing.
Amen to that. Sure.
Totally. Unless someone else has something to say about this, I'd love to move on to question 3. Does anybody else have any burning top 3s that they would want to share? Otherwise, let's move on.
I'm going to connect it to the next one, Julian. So I'll just say it
Okay.
and then we can elaborate on it. It's
So
not
good.
enough for your customer. Not having that direct customer input and insight. I see an awful lot of marketers not getting access to customers, and it's awfully hard to communicate in a way that's going to resonate with the customer if you have no access to the customers.
Mhm.
When you say access to the customers, are you referring to doing your due diligence as a marketing person of understanding the target marketplace, or you mean literally connecting to them?
Both. Really literally having conversations with prospects, doing win analysis, loss analysis, talking to new customers right after they agree to move forward, listening in, like Krista said, to sales calls, getting transcripts of meetings that sales is having with customers. That kind of information is invaluable for marketing to actually create customer-centric content. And if they are off in a silo and not given access to actually have conversations with real customers and real lost deals, I mean, honestly, some of the best stuff I've gotten is from loss analysis interviews. If you don't give marketing that access, they're not going to be nearly as effective. So, I mean, going to your next question, it's going to be pretty well aligned.
All right. Nice. That is the next question. What are the 3 most effective things? As opposed to the worst things, these are the best things. What are the most effective things you see, or you'd like to see, ERP partners doing to effectively market to their customers?
I'll pick up where Candace left off there, because I was kind of thinking that we're on the same thought lines, that this would make a perfect transition, right? And I think from a partnership standpoint, sales and marketing on the partner side, and also sales on your own team, it's huge to be able to put together co-sell and co-marketing materials and messaging and planning together, whether that's participation in QBRs or just planning when you get together when somebody first becomes a partner. Really help create those co-marketing materials together. Blogs and videos are a great example. They're relatively quick wins, and you can use one to feed the other, to feed social, to feed email, to feed all these other channels of communication. And it really doesn't take a lot of time, which I think is another sort of misconception, is that all this stuff takes a ton of time, and some of it certainly does. You want to plan it effectively, but once you actually do the creation, you can use a video, transcribe it to become a blog, share that in social, share that in email and such. And I think part of that then also extends to helping create customer stories. When you partner with somebody, you don't want them to just resell your brand and your product. You want them to partner with you and represent you, and having even 1 or 2 customer success stories together goes a long way in telling that story. And when the partner has a vested interest of, hey, let's go win this business together, and then let's have that customer participate in the story that we're telling to others, then the rest of the market is going to listen, because it's a real world experience. And you've shown your partner that you care about helping generate that business with them, and not just waiting for them to send you the lead. So it really establishes the trust with the partner, the relationship with the customer, and gives you a bunch of material that you can then share with the rest of the ERP world and market that can help them come on board as a lead, as a customer, as a partner, et cetera.
That's great, Mary. Thank you.
Yeah, I would definitely add to that and say, like, learning from your existing market and gaining focus is so important, because you can't be all things to all people. Whether you have telemetry on your solution, you can see what pages customers are actually accessing and then marketing that back to the field, or understanding how people are using the product today, or what they like, what they don't like, from sales, from customer success, which is really important, from product teams. That helps a lot with getting that repeatability, because then you're not having to build a new market for every single customer. You can kind of go in, saturate the market, get into the next market, saturate it, rather than trying to do everything at a 100 level and never really getting that depth. And like we've been saying, I think a common theme is that ERP is based on building trust. If you want to build trust, go really deep in one industry, one customer segment, one use case, and that will help you ensure that you appear to be part of the tribe, rather than just wearing the same hat for everyone, or trying like very minimal rebranding for all the different industries.
Great, Caleb. Thank you very much.
I think my top 3 would be First one would be follow up on MQLs and follow up on MQLs and then follow up on MQLs. Because so many people, I've talked to so many partners who they do an event or they do a webinar or they go to a trade show or they do an email, and then they move on to the next event or trade show. Like they move on to their next initiative. Maybe they do a campaign with this ISV and then they move on. But those are still warm MQLs over here. Even if they're cold, it's still a contact that you have. And maybe that person didn't want to talk to you that month or the next month, but maybe they want to talk to you 4 months down the road or 6 months down the road. And it takes so much effort to get those contacts and to qualify them remotely, that to then just leave them because you've moved on to something else. It's heartbreaking as a marketing person. And the other one that I see, kind of an easy thing that partners can be doing that I see really effective is celebrating successes. I think partners get used to the impact that partners have on clients becomes normal to the partner, but it's not for the client.
Mm.
And the partners kind of forget how big it can be for the client. And celebrating those successes, celebrating the impact that your team had can have a big impact on your team so they don't get burned out as well. But also it has a big impact on your messaging. It's, the easiest thing you can do. Candace has mentioned a number of times, talking to the clients and selling, case studies, quotes, doing a press release, or if you don't want to do a press release, writing a blog about the story of how this started and how this went. Some clients don't necessarily want to do a case study. They don't want their brand name out there showing how bad it was before. You can write a blog about it and celebrate that impact. And so I think one of the biggest things, like it's the most effective, is people want to celebrate things. So make sure that you're doing that. And then the third one would just be client newsletters. Again, going back to that client communication. There's so many partners I talk to where they find out too late that a client has moved on to another product, that they didn't even know that their client was looking for something new. And so just making sure that your clients are aware of all the services you offer. Do you offer hosting? Do you offer a cloud thing? Do you offer these ISV relationships that can help them out? A lot of times people are so worried about stirring the pot, and we don't want to tell them about these options because then they might go to market. They're gonna go anyways if they're not happy. So make sure that they know that you're an option and they know what options you offer.
Smart.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
So I have some things here. So one thing around marketing is specificity matters. So for example, we work with a company that does pricing, and you can say, we give you pricing functionality so you can improve profitability. Or you can say, our client was able to use our pricing functionality to modify prices, not just across the board, but so if they were able to negotiate special pricing from a specific vendor and they wanted to hold on to that extra profit, they could not just do a straight markup from those vendors where they negotiated special pricing, and then they could actually accrue the benefit of those negotiations to their own organization. That kind of specificity is what prospects are looking for, and it takes, going back to talking to the customers, to understand the explicit customer story. The second thing I would suggest is making the customer the hero. Don't say our pricing platform did that. The customer was able to create special pricing considerations based on negotiations they did. So the customer accomplished this as an outcome. When you make your product or yourself the hero, it becomes less believable. And then the third thing is around thought leadership. I know that thought leadership as a concept seems big and difficult to accomplish, but really what we're talking about here is all kind of thought leadership concepts. An easy way to pick up on thought leadership topics and start publishing content about it is to just record your calls with customers and pay attention to what questions the customers are asking. And then what you have said in response, or what your sales team or what your consultant said in response to that question. Record that, get a transcript, hand it off to a writer to then write. They could probably get 3 or 4 blog posts out of one conversation, and then have them write shorter LinkedIn posts. Please publish that stuff on LinkedIn, not just as a link to your blog, but actually a native post on LinkedIn, because that's how you nurture your lurkers. And lurkers on LinkedIn are people who become customers. So it's really valuable to get that content out there on platforms where your prospects are going to be, because they're probably not coming to your blog until they're ready to buy, and you need to be nurturing them earlier than that.
Thank you. Totally get that. Mary, did we get a chance to let you weigh in on this? I'm not remembering if you specifically did or didn't.
I did. I started.
Okay, cool.
I know it seems like yesterday, but thank you for starting.
I want to move on to the next question. The next question is, how should a company, no, that's not the next question. The real question is, if someone, and a lot of business leaders will be on this meeting who are pulled in 1,000 directions and don't have half a day to devote to marketing. If someone had 15 minutes a day, if they had to devote 15 minutes a day, guaranteed every day, to enabling their organization to market their product or services effectively, what would they spend that 15 minutes doing?
Well, I think this is intentionally maybe a bit of a challenging question to answer, but I will say if you're spending only 15 minutes on marketing, then probably the way that you're selling is like whale hunting. Like you're doing a lot of hand-to-hand combat selling. You're not selling in a mass market or mid-market solution. And so if you do only have 15 minutes, spend it learning, because then that learning will echo in every single deal that you have, but and every single conversation that you have. But if you're not spending at least 15 minutes learning, then you can't do anything well. So prioritize learning and maybe segment your workload. Like if you know that you have one campaign that you want to send out throughout the year, you're working on 15-minute intervals, maybe you can start out with learning and spending some time on that, creating some messaging and targeting a very, very small focus company. It's going to relate to our next question about resourcing a little, but time is a resource, right? So if you have a very limited resource, focus on a very limited group of people, learn absolutely everything about them, and then deliver that message to them. Don't try to go mass market if you only have 15 minutes a day.
Thank you, Khaled. Excellent.
Yeah, I'll pick up on that, Khaled, with my message for that is very similar. Kind of, if that's all you have, 15 minutes, spend that time connecting with, following, commenting, supporting your clients and partners on social media, again, LinkedIn in particular. You know, like and comment on the things that they're sharing, repost things that they're providing, because that shows the, you know, the 80-20 rule is spend 80% of your time focusing on what the people in your market are doing, your customers, your partners, the problems they're solving and all of that, and 20% about your own products. So if you're going to spend that 15 minutes, spend it celebrating and honoring them without saying anything about your products. It's super hard, not going to lie, but it really does have that effect of, you know, the message of nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So you're really supporting their brand and really helping them get the word out. And when those people, you know, then go back to their partner, they're going to say, you know, hey, this company really does care about my business and they're trying to help me get the word out too, before doing anything about your own brand. And then take that, like you said, into what you're learning and be able to use that in other capacities to help educate people. But really celebrate others as opposed to yourself during that time, and you'll get way more out of it than if you posted something about your product.
Thanks, Mary. That's great. Candace, Krista, you guys have any thoughts on this one?
You know we do. Go ahead, Krista. You go first.
My answer is really, it depends, because it really depends on who we're talking about here. Are we talking about a CEO that has a marketing person and a budget? And if that's so, then they should spend their 15 minutes each day checking in with the marketing person to see what they need. Do they need their CEO or their president or whoever we're talking about here to post on, to be active on social media? Do we need them to come up with a blog topic? Do we need them to nudge sales or the implementation team to answer their emails for blog content? You know, that 15 minutes a day of ask what your marketing person needs if you have that person. If we're talking about a person who doesn't have someone in-house but has outsourced people, then, you know, in 5 days they could send a blog topic to their blog writer. The next day they could check publishers for any new content. 2 of those days they could post on social media themselves. And then the 5th day, I would say email a client and schedule a call to talk to them to get some quotes. And then, you know, the next week you have that call. And in that 15 minutes, you get some quotes from them that can be used on social media, on your website, in your content.
Wow,
If we're talking about
that's-
someone, sorry.
That's awesomely specific.
Yeah, this is, if we're talking about someone who has no internal resources and no budget and no external resources, then 15 minutes a day isn't really going to be that much. I would say it won't be effective. I don't want to say a waste of time completely, because I'm sure they could do something, but if you have no outsourced or internal marketing support, then I would say bundle those 15 minutes a day and spend 2.5 hours every 2 weeks focusing on your marketing. And in that 2.5 hours, maybe 1 month, you know, in the 5 hours you write a blog, and the next month you could schedule social media posts, you could get feedback from a client, and like bundle that together so that you're getting 2.5 hours of actually accomplishing something. If you have no other resources, trying to do something in 15 minutes a day, because then you check the box and say, I did something for marketing today. You're gonna then, you know, after a month go, marketing doesn't work. I didn't get anything from it, which we get told a lot.
Thank you, Chris. So that's great.
Yeah.
Candace, what do you got?
Okay, so remember my point about easy buttons and magic fairy dust? Frankly, I think that assuming that marketing can get done in 15 minutes a day is believing in magic fairy dust. It's not possible. Krista gave some really good pointers, though, for what to do. And I love the points that Mary and Khaled made too. So starting with Khaled's point about focus. The more you are focused on a specific target audience, somebody was talking on LinkedIn about how so many ERP vendors are trying to bark up multiple trees at the same time. And I just had this image of a dog trying to chase all these different squirrels up all these different trees. And he's just like, I need a meme for that, like a GIF, because that's kind of what so many of the ERP partners are doing, is being that dog. So don't try to bark up too many trees. Just pick one squirrel to go after and chase that squirrel. You're going to be more effective and people are going to trust you more. Mary pointed out commenting on LinkedIn. That is a really powerful tool. If you can find, if your customers are posting, you should be commenting on their posts consistently. If your prospects are posting, comment on their posts. Engaging comments, not nice post, Khaled, but an engaging comment that actually engages people in conversation. If you spent 15 minutes a day on LinkedIn just commenting on posts, you would find that you're going to get a lot more followers and a lot more people paying attention to you. And if you're really strategic about where you're commenting, that's going to make a big difference. And then Krista was talking about using resources. So we're right now in the process of bringing on a writer to do some work to take load off of my plate. And I use Loom, which is a software where I can create videos really quickly. And I am right now having the writer write up some articles around LinkedIn automation and why you shouldn't do it. And so I'm literally pulling up like some of these automation providers their websites and debunking the claims. In a Loom video, takes me 10 minutes to do a pretty detailed Loom video. Then the writer will get the video and a transcript, and she will be able to write pretty detailed articles just based on that 15-minute video. And then the last thing is that those questions and answers. Your customers are asking questions all the time. You're responding to them. get that transcript, and then you might even go to a Loom video and say, okay, this is what we said, but these are the most important points about that, so that you don't have to do the writing, but then a writer can grasp your voice in addition to the important points. And that's how you can sort of become more of a thought leader in a simple way.
Interesting.
And then-
Thanks.
Love
And then
that.
I was just gonna say, and then share those with your partners, those Loom videos or whatever it is that you create, share those with your partners, because the less work they have to do, the more likely they are to help execute and share content.
Absolutely. And if
Mhm.
you do it right, you can actually post that Loom up on LinkedIn or YouTube also, because there's that itself can be great content. We find that less professionally produced videos perform better on social media than the overly produced ones.
It fully makes sense, given like TikTok and all the things like that that's really been an influence. Hey, there's a question from the audience that really keys in, so I'm going to interrupt our first questions just with the to interject a audience question, and it comes from Tikam Bera, and Tikam writes, another strategy is to convince the ERP users in marketing pitch by giving tangible solutions to each of the users so that their day-to-day activities are automated and simplified. Most of the headache is reduced, and there's a higher possibility of selling your product. And then he goes on to ask, he'd be interested to hear what this team thinks about this idea that he uses to successfully to procure customer trust.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, that's what Microsoft does with land and expand. That's what a lot of partners do with like a kind of freemium model where you're showing some features, you're showing some tangible evidence. It doesn't even have to be honestly access to a solution. It can be something like I employ really quite frequently is a roadmap or a self-check document that customers can use, figure out, maybe Mary's doing this at PayTrace and she's thinking, what can I do to improve my AP process? And I'm gonna check, like, do I need three-way matching? Do I need something else? Do I need a portal to onboard my providers, my suppliers, anything like that? And then that allows the customers to start qualifying themselves. So that's a free resource that is available to them that kind of sells the value. It's tangible, something they can interact with without having to give away IP. But of course, if you have small utilities that you can offer for free, or maybe it's an open source thing like a portal or something like that, that's a really good tool as well, because then you're entrenching yourself and creating brand trust. And you're a core part of their business, so it's really easy to add on top of that rather than win a cold account.
Good point. Yeah, thank you, Khaled. Does anybody else want to chip in on that one, or can I move on to our final prepared question of the day?
Yeah, I think that creating content like that that's specific to specific users and use cases can be really, really powerful. Keep them short. You don't want these to be more than 3 or 4 minutes long. And so then you show little spot things about, here's how a payroll specialist can automate this specific function. And then publish those on your website if they're little videos. And again, you can use Loom to do this, or some really easy screen sharing thing. Just show 2 or 3 things that an accounts payable person could do, and 2 or 3 things that a payroll person could do to automate and make their lives easier, and throw those up on your website and throw them up on YouTube and LinkedIn. Make sure that they're, you've got some keyword rich data in there so that people can find them. That's a great way to win trust across a buying committee that you don't always get full access to.
100%.
Good
I
point.
will add a little bit of a caveat to that though. I think I fully support this content creation plan, but it can also be overwhelming when you sit down to look at doing it. And say you're a partner who targets 4 industries. You're not going after 10, you're just going after 4 or even 3. And then you're like, okay, so I want to do the warehouse specialist, the CEO, the CFO, this, and you end up with 5 jobs per industry. And then suddenly you have 15 different people that you're trying to create content for. And you've got it very quickly becomes very overwhelming. And so I would say, if you're going to do this, which I recommend as a method of creating content. Start with just one industry, and do, you know, the 5 jobs in that industry and the ways that you can help those people just for that. Because, and it just, I've talked to a few clients who it becomes so overwhelming that they don't end up going anywhere, because it's just, there's too much to do, and we don't, let's do something, let's focus on something else. So that's why I would just suggest, if you're going to explore that, focus on one industry, do that for a few months. Don't say we're going to do it all this month, do it for a couple months, spread it out. Then once you like those, go to another industry so you don't overwhelm your team.
Thanks,
That
Kristen.
is such good advice.
Totally. Moving on to final question number 5 before we get directly into audience Q&A. And audience, thank you for your continued addition of questions to the queue. Please do continue to send them in as you have them. I will be reading those following this question. Final question that I have is, how should a company with limited budget or resources develop an effective marketing strategy? I think we covered a lot of this, got covered over these last couple of questions, but if any of you have any other things particularly geared towards people who maybe they don't have a large marketing budget, or maybe they have money, but they simply don't have the time or the resources to devote to it, who either know how to or have the time to. But if someone is severely lacking in either time, money, or resource, like, what do you find to be a common good way to help them not actually but market, but develop a strategy that could serve them well?
Yeah, so I'll take that. And to be honest, I'm not a marketer. Like, I am an economist, and that is my academic background. And that's what helps me succeed as a marketer today, is that I am not a marketer. But one of my favorite books because of economics is Moneyball. And if any of you are familiar with it, the Oakland A's are trying to compete, but they can't play the same game because the Yankees and the Red Sox are paying 20 times their payroll. And so that's the number one thing that I think marketing teams with limited budgets and resources should think about, is that you're not playing the same game. Don't try to throw all your money into PPC, because honestly, if you're spending like $500 a month on it, you might as well spend nothing, because you're not going to rank against a company that is going in with $15,000 a month. And if you are going with a small budget, really focus your attention. And that's been kind of the theme for us all day long. But also consider using some of the free tools. You don't have to go for a massive marketing automation tool like Marketo, or pay for HubSpot Enterprise for everything. You can use so much free resources that are available. Even if you use like Canva for free, there you go. You're creating graphics that are beautiful, they're appealing. And then you can invest in the message, invest in the things that actually matter, like learning about your customers, like engaging with them, like building the trust, not just throwing money at the problem, which can be helpful to amplify a good message. But a bad message that you throw money at is still a bad message. You're just sending it to more people.
Yeah, I would echo that, Khaled. And I would also encourage folks to start small. You know, you're not going to be able to build Rome in a day, because it didn't happen then, it's not going to happen now, right? And so when you look at small, think of all the different elements of content that we've talked about today. And I'll emphasize video, because several examples that have been shared here today are relatively quick. Some of them are free or very inexpensive. When over the years we started creating videos, we started doing it on our phone. Just use your phone, capture the video, download it, transcribe it, use that as multiple pieces of content, but use it to tell the story. Tell the story of something really cool that you did with a customer, really cool that you did with a partner, how you helped somebody solve their problem, the benefits that they're receiving and now able to build into their daily life. Again, if you're going to start, don't start with your product. Start with how your product helped somebody else, and then share that with partners and say, hey, we've got this story that we'd love for you to share with your customers. Would you be willing to do that? Whether it's email, LinkedIn, or whatever. But you've started with this great piece of content that then is like the ripple effect, right? It continues to grow as you share it with others, and then they share it with others, et cetera. So how you solve the problem, start small, and use your phone. You don't have to spend a lot of money. Everybody has a phone these days, right? Capture it and then find a way to transcribe it. Because once you get it on your website, now you can use that content to drive thought leadership traffic and be able to post it in other channels like social media. So you share it and encourage others to share it, but tell the story of how you're solving the problem. Start small.
Great. Thanks, Mary. That's awesome. Unless Krista, Candace, you guys had any particular additions to that, there are some audience questions that are coming in that I could go to. What's your preference?
I'd like to just highlight, so I think just two quick things. To me, marketing is a three-legged stool. There's strategy, tactics, and execution. And if you don't have all three, you're going to fall over and it's not worth doing. And so just a quick thing on tactical, focus on your differentiators. Kind of like what Mary was talking about, but really focus on not the product. If you have limited budget or resources, just make sure that your marketing is effectively marketing you and not the product, your team. When you're looking at, so that would be the execution. If you're looking at what tactics to do, like creating the strategy and choosing your tactics, look at your goals and figure out, really focus on the why that is your goal. So many partners come to me and say, we want to grow. And when I say why, it's like, well, because we want to grow. I'm like, that's great, but why? Do you want more money for you? Do you want to have more profits so that you can get a bigger office, so that you can have a bigger Christmas party, so that you can give your team raises? Why do you want to grow? Because if it's just because I'm supposed to, that's probably not a good enough reason. And what do you, if you want more sales of what? Are you wanting to sell software? You want to sell hosting? Do you want to do ISV sales? And what are you wanting to sell? Because why you are wanting to grow and how you want to grow will completely dictate what tactics I would recommend.
Interesting. Yeah,
and so just make sure that you consider all three, strategy, tactics, and execution when especially if you have a limited budget, because we don't want you, like Mary said, we don't want you throwing money away. And there's no point doing small campaigns if it's not going to have an impact. So just make sure you're focused if you have limited resources.
And I'll just bring it back to strategy just quickly. What everybody has said here is so critically important, but if you don't know who you're targeting and limit your target, you're going to really struggle. So don't try to be that dog barking up all those different trees, because you're going to be way, way more effective if you are focused on one particular target market with a specific set of problems, because you have a specific set of skills. And so then you can bring together what Krista was just talking about around the specific things that make you unique to the market, rather than you sounding like every other partner out there. You're, like everybody has been saying, you're not selling features, you're selling your services as a trusted partner to get it implemented and for that customer to be able to accomplish their goals. And the more consistent you are around serving a specific kind of goal, specific kind of customer, and the more narrow you make that, the more effective you'll be. It's really counterintuitive, but the more you niche, the faster you grow.
Totally, Candace. Thank you for that. Let me ask another question coming from audience. And what webinar these days would be complete without a question related to ChatGPT and AI? So in order to become compliant with being a legitimate thing today, I'm going to ask the question that was just asked in the chat, which is, in relation to like recommending, I guess what it is would you recommend incorporating ChatGPT and AI in marketing? And if so, how would you do that?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yeah, right. Boil the ocean here.
Yeah. I'm going to the first question. Yeah. Yes, I would recommend it. How? Oh, that's a big one. Really depends on your team and what you're trying to create. I think because I'm me, let's go with that. I feel like you have to give, anytime you're looking at AI, you have to look at where it's pulling information from and the ethics behind it.
Mhm.
And I don't mean that of, you know, the AI is going to take over the world. I mean the ethics of, if you're creating art, if you're using it to create graphics, are you stealing an artist's work? And are you creating graphics that show the world you exist in? A lot of stock photography, which is my pet peeve, is Caucasian men in business suits. And that is not a world that many of us live in. So I would just, you know, there's ways to use AI carefully. And I would also give the caution of, there's journalists who have published articles referencing stats from AI that are completely made up. So just because AI spits it out doesn't mean, like ChatGPT makes things up. So it's not a be all end all. I think there are hundreds of ways to leverage it to save us time, but we have to be very careful with how we do it so that we are putting out accurate information that is not offensive or inappropriate in any way.
That's really well said. Really well said.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else chime in on that bad boy?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. My rule of thumb is use it where it can help make what you already do more efficient, more effective, and always, always, always have a human interpret it, fact check to support what Krista was just saying, and then use the pieces of it that are relevant to your message, to your story, to your customer base. It can't possibly replace us all because there's no human thought and emotion and fact checking that's built into it. So use it to be efficient. Don't replace your people with it.
Totally.
Yeah, rewrite.
100%.
Sucks as a writer. It's like
Yeah.
the most boring writer on the planet. So rewrite, pull stuff in, but I love to use it to dump a transcript in. Now, ChatGPT can't take a full transcript, but there's one that I've just recently discovered called Claude.ai, which is a very ChatGPT-like product and currently free, where you can dump a really long transcript, like an hour-long transcript into it and ask it to summarize it, give you main takeaways, give action items. Like I just fed it a conversation that I had a transcript from, and I asked it to give me a summary, give the key points, give the action items and next steps. And then it missed a few things. So then I added it and said, these are some important things, now restate. And it did a really nice job of then creating something I could use to follow up with the client. I could also use that as kind of fodder for those Loom videos that I'm going to then send to a writer to give me decent content for that's in my voice. So yes, you can use the tool to be more efficient, but like Krista said, and like Mary said, it lies all the time. There's been some lawyers who have gotten into a lot of trouble because they cited cases that ChatGPT very confidently referenced for them, and the cases didn't actually exist. And they presented them. Yeah.
Yes. The command rewrite with talent doesn't really work very well, does it?
Yeah.
No.
Here's another question for you guys, and I think this is kind of interesting. It deals with platform, and it's how important is it for partners to put effort into developing their presence on up and coming / less traditional media platforms? And they cite things like X, formerly Twitter, Threads, the new Facebook one, TikTok. We deal in an industry that is kind of homogenous and kind of tends to be on the older side, lacking the youth that some other industries will have. Like, what is it? What is your feeling on going on spending some time on some of the newer, more up and coming, less common ones for our traditional audience in this industry?
Well, if you were a fisherman, where would you go and fish?
Where the fish are, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I would say if you believe that there's an opportunity to grow this little pond that just started out and fish there, for sure, go for Threads. But Threads came and went. And if you invested that whole week when it was relevant into Threads, that was probably a weak waste. So I would be cautious. I mean, our buyer persona as mid-market ERP is a little more conservative, and that is very reasonable because they're dealing with something that can really change their enterprise. So they tend to be like that with their overall life. But the other thing that is kind of the other side of the coin is that they are also human beings. So don't think that you can only market on LinkedIn and be super professional. Maybe it is worthwhile to go for a TikTok video every now and then and show that you have personality and are different, because that is part of differentiating as well.
Yep, thank you for that. By the way, I want to acknowledge it is on the hour. We have gone an hour here. And those of you who need to leave, of course, we understand that. I recognize also there could be a couple more things that panelists might want to say on this last question. So I want to just say, if you're able to stick around for just a few more minutes, I would love to allow the panelists to pass through this final question related to platforms and anything else they might want to add. And then we will move on in the very end of this to thank all of you and let you know as well that in the LinkedIn event, we are going to be putting contact information for those of us on the panel who chose to share their information with you, that you can reach out to them if you have further questions or if you have need for services, marketing services. But I want to continue and allow those of you, Caleb, thank you for your input. Mary, Krista, Candice, if you have any thoughts, particularly regarding platforms.
I would say oh, sorry, go ahead.
My feedback would be typically how I respond to any client who comes to me and says, how should we be on social media? You know, do we need to be here? What should we be doing? And my response is generally, what's the comfort level of your team? If you have someone on your team who really wants to do TikTok, then great. Because there's accountants who give advice on TikTok. There's lawyers, like there's people who have these active channels. A couple of years ago, I probably would have said, no, don't bother. You know, that's where the millennials follow their music people. But TikTok is totally different now. And it's where a lot of people are. And if you have someone on your team who wants to do that, great. If you have, I have one client right now, they've been around for 20 years and they are just setting up their LinkedIn profiles because they're just not social media people. I'm not going to push them to go on TikTok because it's going to be the most awkward video and it's going to be horrible and they'll go viral for being horrible. So it really depends on, choose your platforms based on the team you have. Don't force them into places where they're not going to fit, would be my advice.
Excellent. Mary, Candice, do you have anything to add to that?
Go ahead, Mary.
I was just going to say I support the idea that Kala described with, fish where the fish are, obviously, if your audience is there. I also agree with the skills and comfort level that Krista just described. But I think the other element is look at the data that you have right now about your audience and your traffic to see where it's coming from and who is sharing content, yours or like yours, in those other channels and on those other platforms. Because nobody else is there doesn't always mean, oh, great, this is this greenfield opportunity for me to go. It could mean that it's been tried and tested and it's just not relevant on that platform for your audience. Or you could be the one that tries it or tests it and then again use that data to make a decision. So I wouldn't say rule in or rule out anything until you've tested it, but also don't assume that just because those platforms exist, you need to have a presence there.
Thank you, Mary.
I'm going to go back to my metaphor of the dog jumping up at all those trees. It used to be that you could be on all these platforms and use social media as kind of like a free advertising tool. And you just throw your posts up on all of these platforms and people see them and maybe they'll engage and you didn't have to be too strategic about how you do it. But that doesn't work anymore. Every platform has its own unique algorithm of how it works. The way that you engage on TikTok is completely different than the way you engage on LinkedIn, and Twitter X is completely different than Threads. Threads doesn't exist anymore, by the way. I didn't even know that.
Really?
But
yeah, so I would recommend that you go where you fish where the fish are. So go where your customers are hanging out and ignore the rest of the platforms because your customers are there, go there. And that may not be like, that might be some sort of a space on sorry, what's the platform that so many people like engage in communities? Now I can't even think of it.
Meetup or next door?
Yeah, well, not Nextdoor, maybe Meetup, and there's another platform that I actually have the app, but I can't think of it now. But
Hence
you
the challenge
may
of too many
find-
platforms.
That is it. That's exactly the problem.
Exactly the point.
Yeah, I can't even remember the platform. But a lot of companies use it internally to try to save time and create their own internal networks. And now there's a lot of organizations that create separate networks for that. I specialize in LinkedIn. That's all I focus on. I teach people how to use LinkedIn, how to hunt on LinkedIn, how to draw inbound traffic on LinkedIn. I spend all of my time every day thinking about LinkedIn and marketing and how do I get my message out. And even with that focus on LinkedIn, I'm still learning every day new tricks about the algorithm. I'm still trying to figure out how to leverage that algorithm the most effectively for our business and for our clients. You don't have full time to focus on any channels. I couldn't possibly take YouTube and Twitter and LinkedIn and figure out how to work all of those algorithms by myself. So like Krista said, if you've got somebody who's really good at TikTok, then go ahead and your customers are on TikTok, lean into that. But don't assume that you're going to be able to be effective across a bunch of platforms. Focus.
Thank you very much, Candace. Very well. Candace, Krista, Mary, Kaylin, I want to thank all four of you for your willingness to be panelists here. And thank you, audience, for showing up. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it. As I said, we will put all of our panelists' information up on the event. And thank you, everybody, for coming, and especially you panelists for giving us your time and your thought leadership today.
Thanks, Julian.
Thanks
Happy to
for
be here.
having me.
Thanks.
Thank you,
You
everyone.
got it.
That's-
And we are